And up first, we have the Citizens Forum. I don't know that we have anybody tonight.
Those are old ones.
So then we will have the facility assessment presented by Witset.
Nope, Brent Damon is. Can you hear us okay, Brent?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I have mine. I'm trying to take yours.
How you doing, Brad?
Let's see. Not too bad. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. I am sharing my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Okay. Let me know if you'd like me to start.
we're ready.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. All right. Thank you very much. Well, what I thought I would do is just briefly walk through the facility assessment report that we put together. Just kind of give you a broad overview of each item. And then if there's any questions along the way, just feel free to interrupt me and I can dig in a little bit deeper into that. We were tasked to complete a facility assessment that really focused on specific items. So we didn't do a broad assessment of the entire facility, all aspects of it. This was a much more targeted review of, I would say, LTF related items. I'll go through each of the items first, and then I'll come back to the financial part of it. So I'm just going to scroll ahead. You all should have a copy of this assessment. Hopefully you've had a chance to maybe skim through it. But like I said, I'll just quickly walk through it. First, taking a look at the site conditions. We took a look at the sidewalks around the facility, the condition they were in, observed some of the deterioration that's occurred, some of the repair work that has occurred. And, you know, and what we see is really pretty typical of sidewalks, walking surfaces that have been in use for, you know, this length of time, where freeze thaw periods, you get that lifting and deterioration of the concrete. In particular, you'll see edges of panels like this that are eroding away and basically become like trip hazards. You know, so we observed that around the facility. And then in addition, we also took a look at maybe where there could be improvements to where additional sidewalks might be needed. A good example is on the south side of the facility at the parking lot. You know, maybe connecting up that sidewalk and leading it towards the athletic complex, that entrance over on that side. So our recommendation as it related to the sidewalks was removing and replacing them all, including some areas where the curving has also deteriorated. You know, we would also look at taking care at the same time. The next area we took a look at was the vehicular traffic around the facility, in particular the north side of the building and then the southeast side of it. Just understanding that there's a lot of conflict there with bus traffic, parent pickup drop-off, that it can make it challenging at times. And our civil engineer took a look at the layout, and his recommendation was on the north side of the facility, creating basically like a parent pickup drop-off loop, so parents could come in, have a single lane here that for driving through and another lane for pulling off. They pull off, pick up, drop off, pull back on, and basically have like a roundabout at the end that would turn them back around and direct them all the way out. We would separate this by an earth berm, you know, taking advantage of some of that leftover soil that was when the building was originally constructed. I believe it's south of the facility. There's some of that material still left, that we would take advantage of that for creating a berm, just to try to reduce the possibility of students, say, crossing this lane and getting picked up on this side. You know, we want to certainly discourage that type of activity. You know, we want all of the pickup drop off along here. In addition to adding this lane, also adding a sidewalk along that entire length. We would still leave it connected to the lane on the back. That way, fire department would still have access around the entire building. And then on the southeast side, modifying that entrance area into the bus lane. The bus lane itself would essentially remain unchanged. We would just create another lane next to it so that vehicles come in here to access this parking lot. They can come in, park, back out, and then come back around. So essentially we would create a one-way flow here so they're not having to cross traffic. We probably take a look at the striping in this parking lot and maybe set it up for diagonal parking to help reinforce that flow of traffic in one direction. Any questions on that?
That's just pretty much gonna be reconstructing what we have now, those temporary barricades.
Yeah, this would basically, what we're proposing here would be more of a permanent solution. So creating a new lane, and what we're showing here is doing a similar type of berm, earth berm. But that could easily be just a concrete hard surface or something else. On the site equipment, we just took a look at the condition of the benches, picnic tables, those type of elements around the building, and basically looked at a one-for-one replacement, just due to the wear and tear that they've seen over the years. Looking at a style of benches here that could easily be removed towards the end of the year. That way, for snow clearing purposes, you don't have those in the way. And then, like I said, a one-for-one replacement, but then we also kind of factored in maybe adding some additional waste receptacles by the major entry points, especially on maybe the north side. If that starts to get used more for pickup, drop-off, maybe you want some more of those elements up there. So we did factor a little bit of that in there. On the playground area, just taking a look at some improvements to that facility, replacing and supplementing outdated equipment, making some improved accessible paths throughout the playground area. Just looking at improvements in that sense. When we priced this, we also did factor in if you wanted to go the option of an all-resin playground system. That's something we've seen coming a little bit more and more common with playground areas just for an accessibility standpoint. But, when I get to the end of my presentation, I go back to totaling up the numbers. That is not factored in. So if that was a feature, something that you would want to consider, you would just have to remember that we got to factor in some additional dollars for that. The running track area, we took a look at that, the condition of it, some of the cracking and heaving that we saw throughout, as well as some of the support elements like the long jump, triple jump areas, some of those surfaces, remediating them to get them more to new standards, removing this basically down to the base. So we're not saying that the base would have to be replaced based on the information we've got and the core samples that were taken. We believe that would be good. So basically taking it down to the base and then rebuilding it. And then for the football field area, basically regrading that and adding an irrigation system throughout that area. Again, we did factor in an option there that if you wanted to consider artificial turf, just what that additional cost would be on top of this. Sticking in the athletic field area, we took a look at what the impact would be to add a new building there to provide concessions, public restrooms, storage, and a press box on that one east side of the field area, and what that would be from a cost standpoint. We didn't get into preliminary plans or layouts. We just approximated the square footage necessary based on 6 fixtures within each restroom, some concession stand space, and then storage space. Looking at the roofs, so what over this last summer, North Central Insulation Urethane Foam Contractors, they completed an assessment of your existing roof. So we reviewed their report, and that is what you see in here. Seth, I don't know if you can comment on how often they look at the roof. Do they come annually?
Eric's here annually at the bare minimum. This past summer, he was up here 3 times. He went up and watched the roof. There's
Okay.
an area that he found on his 3rd trip up here that was already leaking, where the foam was getting wet, so he had his guys come over and cut out that section and replace it while they were in the area working.
Okay. So what you see here is his report, and then he did factor in some costs for this work. And so we basically just took those numbers and just factored in a little bit of inflation, thinking ahead if this was something that was bid a year from now, where that cost might be, as well as some of the soft costs that would be accounted for just going through the bid process. On a similar note, with the window conditions, there was also a report that was completed over this last summer. Seth, I don't think I noted who had completed that
Woody
report.
behind me.
Okay. So what you see in my assessment is that report. And so the recommendation was to replace all of the aluminum clad wood windows with a similar style, and then providing separate window blinds not between the glass, but just a separate window blind system for sun control. On the exterior of the building, we took a look at the masonry conditions, some of the staining, some of the dark areas, just to observe the deterioration. One thing we noted was that our recommendation would that be all of the joints in the masonry system be recaulked. So that would be like control joints, masonry to window or door opening joints, basically going around the original building and recaulking those, as well as some identified areas where tuck pointing should be completed. We really had observed that deterioration at the lower concrete block areas, windowsills, cornice areas. That was where we observed more of that mortar joint deterioration. Within the building, looking at the existing flooring, we took a look at, in particular, the VCT flooring. So that's the 12 by 12 tile you see through a lot of the corridor areas. I believe most all of that is original. So, that's pushing 30 years in age. So that's well beyond, its estimated useful life. And you kind of see that in some of the areas now where you see the cracking. You see some of those joints between the tiles separating. And then even more so, just from the annual stripping and waxing, just wearing down that wear surface, you're beginning to see some of those patterns, adhesive patterns within the tile. So that's just going to continue to worsen and fail as time goes on. So the recommendation there was to replace all of that VCT with an epoxy resin flooring that would allow you to get away from waxing. You still can wax it. It'll give a much more reflective surface, but certainly not something that would be necessary. So there's a potential there for just reduction in annual maintenance costs. Looking at the restroom facilities, it was asked that we take a look at what the cost would be to convert one of those restroom facilities to gender neutral. You're seeing a lot more of that in facilities, especially in new construction. And something we see coming down the line where it's just going to be code required. But it also does offer some safety benefits too, and options for students. So you take one of those banks of restrooms and you convert them into individual toilet rooms. So you have basically like a small closet, so to speak, with a single water closet fixture in there. You can go in there, it'd be like a room, you lock it like you normally would, and then out front of there you would have lav sinks for use by anyone. Within the gym area, we took a look at the bleacher conditions. Seth, you can maybe talk a little bit to some of the struggles with finding replacement parts. I think that's, as I understood it, is one of the biggest challenges is when a motor or something goes out, is being able to replace that.
It took us 3 months to find one motor that came out of Virginia.
Yep, so that'll certainly continue to be a struggle if, any of those motors fail. In addition, taking a look at the stair aisles on these, new bleacher systems would have a handrail system in there, as well as basically cutouts within the, say, the first row of bleachers for wheelchair places. That would be something that would be a code requirement now. Looking at the heating system, we had a mechanical engineer come through, took a look at those systems. His recommendation was to replace the boilers with the high efficiency natural gas boilers. He did note that it would be worth considering or exploring the option of a hybrid gas electric boiler system. That would be something if off-peak electricity is offered. And then in addition, replacing the hot water storage tank. And then while he was on site as well, he took a look at the pool mechanical room, the circulating pump that's in that room. Right now that pump runs at full speed, constant volume. His recommendation would be replacing that with a VFD drive, just to allow it to ramp up and down based on the need.
Right now the flow is controlled with the restrictor plate. Motor runs at 1 speed, so in order to get the proper flow rate we need, you have to shut that butterfly valve, and that puts additional pressure, back pressure on the motor.
Yep. And then he took a look at the temperature control systems, and so that's something he's just recommending that as the facility is upgraded, that everything gets switched over to electronic DEC. So as additional equipment, becomes outdated or needs to get replaced, just keeping that in mind. And then finally, looking at the kitchen, freezer, cooler. Again, these are original to the building. So they well outlived their useful life. And the recommendation there would be to replace both of those units with similar sized units. And then it was also noted that an ice maker is needed. So that is also factored in there. So that gets through all the items, specific items that we took a look at. And then we, up in the front of the report, we gave a summary of the costs associated with each of those items. So the costs for these are not just construction budget numbers. We did factor in soft costs, so you get a full picture of what the cost would be. So that would figure in permitting, design fees. In some of these cases, if there's any FF&E, like furniture or equipment, maybe like in the athletic field complex, the concession stand area. So these were intended to be all-in numbers, so that if you picked one or two of these items, you should know that all the costs are covered. Now, these do reflect 2023 pricing, so depending on if you were to do some of these, we would probably want to factor in a little bit more of a contingency. Now, each of these do have a contingency factored in as well. Just distribution, site-related items was about 3.4 million. Building conditions was just under 4 million. Any questions on these items, or anything you want me to dig into a little bit deeper?
Well, there's an obvious question that comes up. I appreciate the flat tone that you occupied for your entire presentation. I was waiting for a moment of panic or eyebrow raise. Did you have any priority on there?
Oh, what was that?
Did you ever come to a priority? Did you prioritize any of that? Did you look at something and just go, oh my God, this needs to go now?
There was nothing in the nature of like what we would say is a immediate safety hazard. If we were going to prioritize, we might look at certainly the building envelope related ones. The roof items, I think, would be a priority, just because of if there's a leak, it'll create additional issues. The next area that we would maybe look at would be accessibility related items. So there you might look at the walking surfaces around the site. The walking surfaces, let's see, what would be another one? Yeah, that's probably the main accessibility one. And then another area would be safety related, which might be the vehicular traffic. So if I was going to prioritize, I would probably be looking at the roof, the vehicular traffic, and the sidewalks. But anything like the window conditions, if masonry joints, if those continue to deteriorate, they will get worse. They're not going to get better.
Yeah, and I think in fairness to Seth, that we've talked about the windows a few times and have sort of arrived at that as, a high need item. But I guess something like that you could also do piecemeal, as opposed to like the walking surface condition. You're not going to replace just one tile at a time type thing.
No, that would certainly be an inefficient way to do it. I mean, from a value standpoint, if you're going to do it, you probably want to do it all at once, because then you get at least some economy of scale there. The athletic field complex, I guess the question might be more for on your side, how much that impacts events, the ability to hold them. You know, I don't know how much of a limiting factor that is.
I do have a question about the epoxy resin post covering for the floor, underneath the VCT tile. Would that resin serve to repair any kind of defect in the concrete underneath? Any kind of a wear crack?
No, you'd have to identify where some of those joints are, you know, if there's something that's still moving or if that was something that cracked, you know, when it was initially poured, you know, that's somewhat typical. If it's something that's carried on, you'd probably want to look at some sort of a control joint in that floor system so you somewhat honor it. Because if a floor continues to crack, it will crack that resin floor.
That's something with all the flooring places that I've talked to over the last couple of years about this. That's one of the first things that they said. You know, once you pull it up and you get down to your bare cement, you got to take care of your cracks, get your base, all of that done before you put anything over top of it. Because otherwise, they would just be throwing money away, and not everyone was willing to do that.
So a cost like that, you wouldn't know until you open it up, or do you guys kind of, yeah?
You kind of got an idea just looking at the floor, looking at the joints, how things have moved through this VCT tile.
Yeah.
And you walk down the joints, you know, where they've cracked. You can find your bad spots and everything like that.
Yeah, those would probably be the greatest indicator of the areas that might be the biggest issue. You know, they'll probably still find some other cracking, but that should be minor if it hasn't projected through the VCT.
And the bad thing is always that unexpected element.
What kind of contingency do you put in? Is it 15% or?
We factored 10% into each of these.
Any discussion on streams of funding for this, other than taxes and state sources? But I mean, are there any grants that support any of this, or?
Well, you mean,
Like safety.
if we were to replace the heating system, let's say, oh, God, we need a new heating system at one point right now, present $1.5 million effectively. There's no way we could pay for that. We'd have to figure out something other than.
Right, and that's why I was wondering if there are just other places we should be looking besides our obvious, you know, raising taxes or.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm looking at it in terms of, we keep talking things like a referendum, but I mean, now you have a tangible need and a very tangible cost, you know, associated with that, but I would think that that's where you go, unless, I mean, if you're.
Well, I was wondering, like, there's the Clean Energy Resource Team, they do grants for, like, energy reductions, those sorts of things. That's, I guess, where I was kind of going with that question.
Do you have any experience with that sort?
No, not with that particular one. It was what, the Clean Energy Resource
Team, CERTs?
term. Okay.
I mean, I'm assuming that, like, when you do these assessments, most of the people, like ourselves, are preparing for a new ask in terms of dollars from somewhere. Not just looking at their larder and saying, okay, we can pull $1.4 million out for a new heating system, and it's, you know, obviously not realistic in schools this size to throw that kind of money around.
Yeah, a lot of times, you know, we're doing a much broader look at the entire facility, every aspect, and maybe even the educational adequacy, and you're really developing more of like a 10-year LTFM plan. That's sort of the more typical, where you would maybe look at how you might spread these out over that 10 years and maybe plan for, some year down the road you see a spike, okay, we got a plan for that. Or it might align when you've got some of those past projects coming off the books. That's a good opportunity to look at improvements as well, not impact from a tax standpoint as much, or if at all.
Right, because I'm going to round number it and just say 50% of the projects that you've just identified, we might be able to pull into a pocketbook and say, all right, we're, the playground improvements at 150,000, and say, that's something we really have to do. I'm not saying that's what it is, but the other 50%, we definitely would have to search for money to get those done. And I assume that's probably a 6 month to a year process at the minimum.
Yeah. There are some too that maybe like the vehicular traffic, the loop on the north side, maybe the south side, maybe some of that we can look at safer routes to school. If that's something that could qualify for that, that might be an option.
Will you repeat that? What did you say?
Safe routes to school.
Okay, so safe route to school.
Yeah, we went through that process, so we haven't found that much money.
Anything else? Any other questions?
The other question is that roof, is that a total replacement that you put in the projection?
Again, we're basing that, we're using the report prepared by others. So no, it's not a complete, there's some areas where they just note there's no concerns at this time.
Okay.
So it's sort of identifying, as you go through this, you'll see section D, E, F, and you'll see how that corresponds to the plan. So it's not, a complete tear off, it's specific areas.
Okay. So it's really a partial.
Yeah, it's more of a recoat up on top.
I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
So do we have any thoughts on next steps? I mean, this is kind of the starting point.
Typically, the next step that we would recommend is getting a group together, whether it's a school board or a building committee, and determining the priority, how you want to go about addressing these. We definitely want to pull in the financial group you work with. Is it Ellers, or who do you work with?
Ellers.
Yeah, so we would definitely want to bring them into the conversation. Because depending on what you consider, if you take a look at going down the path of a referendum, then we'd want to have them start looking at what potential tax impacts might be, because that can certainly impact the decision-making process. So that's usually the next step, is getting a group together, identifying what you want to do and how you want to do it. Once that's sort of determined, if you go the path of a referendum, then we want to get into discussions of timing. What makes sense, just from an election standpoint, and then also working it backwards, just going through the process of reviewing comment and everything we got to do with the Department of Education and getting approvals on that end. So, I think anything in the spring is probably real rapid. You're moving really quick, and I don't know if that would be feasible, so you'd probably have to look at something out further if you were going to go that path. So my next step recommendation would be putting together this group to start digging into these and determining where you want to go from now that you have the information, what's important to the district to address.
I mean, it kind of falls on the buildings and grounds, I assume. I mean, that seems to make at least initial sense, right?
Is it something that we'd want to do, at some point, I think if we just start working towards the referendum, we'd want to have public input opportunities. It'd be nice to have it advertised, and have the community know that we're looking at all of this stuff. That, it's a 30-year-old facility, but it's not gonna fix itself. And I think the more that the community can be involved with helping us prioritize, what do we want the giant brick cell directing the traffic for the next 5-6 years? Are we happy with that, or do we want to do a permanent fix? So in my mind, if we did some type of, whether it's the full board doing public input meetings or doing a working session where you can bring in experts on different pieces of this and make it open to the public, so there's a section of time that you could open it up for public input and question. But it's, that's up to you guys how you want to approach this. Or do we do just a smaller committee and do the priority items first and then pull in more of the public input?
I'm assuming that having been presented at this public meeting, this information is all now publicly available too.
Yeah, and we can have the packet available in the district office and people can come and take a look at it.
And I think just kind of the overall picture of it is, where did the conversation start? Why are we having this? Why did we choose to go forward with this assessment? I think we need to kind of wrap that into these conversations, because, not everybody's been along with us on this ride so far, so.
And some of it you can just walk through the building and see.
Yes.
Why.
Yep, so.
You come in through the main entrance and you see conditions like,
Yeah.
some of it is
Yep.
very obvious.
But then detailing too, how much money is there available on an annual basis for stuff as is? I think that's important too, because not everybody, I don't know that I have a good understanding of what can we spend. Like Tim said, 50% of these we could maybe do if we work at it, but the other 50%, we're not going to touch.
Appreciate Brent saying, yeah, you might be pushing your luck to try to get this through in a spring effort, but we also are in a situation now where we're spending money for projects like this that we really don't have. And to sort of hold off and say, well, let's not really ramp this up. Next thing you know, we're 2 years down the road, the costs have gone up by 15 to 20% again, and we're picking new numbers out of a hat, as well.
True. Yep, that's very true.
And pushing it off too, you're rolling the dice on a major failure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think at a minimum, we want to keep this on our working session, so we keep moving.
Absolutely.
At a minimum.
And we probably should schedule a buildings and grounds regardless of whether we open up a public meeting or not, but at least get more specific and start this process.
Find a direction.
I think sending this to Ellers and getting them started.
I would agree. I think that we need to start with that financial piece as right alongside with what we're doing internally, yeah. As well as, you know, like you said, the public should be aware of it now, you know, and, just simply that it's a 30-year-old building.
Your operating levy is coming to maturity in 2026, 10 years since we renewed that. So that's another tax impact that we're gonna be working on too. So I think getting Ellers involved in looking at the big picture.
And when are we done with the current bond? What year is that? There's a couple, isn't there?
There's one in 2017 that, we
No.
used part of our LTFM to make that bond payment.
But it's not coming, when do we get done with it?
2017.
No, we're already past 2017.
2027, sorry.
That's what I'm trying to ask. Okay. You're trying to back the clock up, Jeff, it doesn't work out.
I'm sorry.
So that piece too will help
It's a 10-year bond.
our LTFM, so that would help the money that's
That would
available.
increase our, I don't know, it's like 90,000 that goes to
Yeah,
that bond payment that normally would be in our.
right. I mean, that would help us with the smaller projects, funding for some smaller things, like, you know, there was some $33,000 ones and some of those smaller.
You have to keep in mind, I think, that there's a portion of the LTFM is taxes.
Right, yeah.
Any more questions for Brent?
Do we work more with Seth at this point? I guess that's my,
Did you hear that question?
No,
Moving forward after this assessment, at what point would we bring you guys back into the mix? Once we pick some projects
well, I would certainly be interested in staying part of the conversation with Ellers because they may have questions about scope or something. But usually the next big involvement piece would be, let's say you pick the path of going down a referendum, assisting with putting together that review and comment document. That's sort of the next big piece to put together, if you go that direction.
So my next step will get hold of Ellers, get this to them, and set that. And then if we have Ellers in, once we get that rolling, then we'll get in contact with Seth and get that connected.
Yeah, if you do any work sessions or anything would like me to join, yeah, just let me know and I'd be happy to be a part of those.
Appreciate that.
great. Well, thank you, Brent. Appreciate that.
No, thank you for the opportunity to present to the group. And if there's any questions, once we get offline, feel free to send them through Jeff and I'll try to address them all.
Sounds good.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie.
All right, anything else on that? I think we've got a path forward, and we do need to keep every month maybe just coming back to this, just so we don't.
Yeah, we should set up a buildings and grounds over here this month, or after New Year's.
Catch
And we may have new committee members, but otherwise it would be you and,
Boyd, I think, is on that.
okay.
The buildings and grounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, next up, we've got department updates. Superintendent Nelson, to start, if you're ready.
I'll make it quick. Enrollment information was sent out in the board packet. We're basically up 3 students, K-12. There's a resolution combining polling places for 2024, and that's going to require a roll call vote. And then I also included, since I figured we'd be talking about possible referendums, the 2024 special election timeline is in the board packet. And as Brent was saying, you can look at the dates. I highlighted August as probably the earliest in 2024. There's a special election date on August 13th. But there's, even that, in my opinion, might be pushing it. And then we have the regular presidential election on November 5th of 2024. Deadlines are there as well. So, and there's different statistics on, running it during a general election, the pros and cons that we need to keep in mind as well.
And my understanding is tonight, we should vote on the combined polling places.
We have to
approve
have,
them,
yep.
And then beyond that, we have time to discuss.
Yes,
other stuff. Okay.
December 31st, you have to have that set, the polling place, in order to do any kind of special election, so. And we do this every year at this time, so it's a normal thing. Update on staffing, with the resignation of Nicole Gate. We are absorbing that position. Diane Carlos has taken over the interventionist Read 180 System 44 position, and Nicole Fiala has been reassigned to school readiness VPK. I've been working with both of them to get training and support as we transition. Ideally, this is not the best time of year to be making these changes, but it's just what we're faced with. So those will be just appointments in the board action tonight. Negotiations, we met last Tuesday on the 12th with Education Minnesota, and we have a next meeting set for January 3rd at 5 p.m. in my office. I guess we continue to have positive meetings, and we're progressing towards a tentative agreement each time. MSEA, we've actually have a tentative agreement, and they are scheduling sometime in January to meet with their members, and hopefully they can ratify the agreement. And once that happens, then it'll come to the board as a whole to approve. And I do have our next meeting with AFSCME group, and that's set for January 9th at 1 p.m., and that'll be in my office as well. Strategic plan review, we didn't schedule any review of any of that for December. In January, we'll, in good timing with our audit report, we'll talk about our finances, and that might be something that's going to be an ongoing discussion. And then the last thing I have on my notes here is our reorganizational meeting as an agenda item. I'm recommending that we meet on Monday, January 8th. And that's the first Monday in January. Since January 1st is a holiday, we can't meet on that day. So January 8th is my recommended date. We can do it earlier if you'd like.
Done like a 7:30 a.m.
I wrote down question marks for time.
7:50 would be the earliest I could get in the building,
7:50?
unless I make John drive my route.
So let's, just in case the weather's bad, can we come in at 8 o'clock?
That's fine with me.
8
as long as it
o'clock
doesn't
on-
screw up your day.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay,
I always have time.
It'll brighten his.
and it's a
It'll-
quick
yes.
meeting. It's generally a quick
It's a
meeting.
quick meeting.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 8 o'clock on the 8th.
Yep, and that'll take a motion in a second and all that good stuff, but that's my recommendation. If you want to discuss different dates, that's up to you folks,
I
but.
think
Let's just set it and then figure it out. if
I
it
think
doesn't
it's on
work.
the agenda, isn't it, as an action
Yeah.
item?
It is,
Yeah.
but I don't think we put in any dates
No,
and stuff,
no, we
so
didn't, no.
that's all I have unless there's questions.
Next up, Ms. Merchant.
Good evening, everybody. Mid-quarter for quarter two was December 15th, and instead of mailing out through the postal service with the deficiencies, we are going to be sending them to parents through email. We just can't justify the cost of postage, and honestly, I think it's more efficient in many ways with parents reading and responding to emails. So that's how we will be doing that moving forward. Band concert on December 4th was absolutely wonderful, and it was 6th through 12th grade, so it was good to see everybody on the high school end of the building performing together. And especially for Mrs. Tangy to be able to move up our students who are advancing to band to be able to play with that next level of band kids, whether it's, the sixth graders playing with junior high kids or some of our junior high kids playing with senior high kids. So that's good to see we're able to challenge them in that way. Our achievement and integration report had some revisions that needed to be made, and I had a Zoom meeting with the person from MDA last week, and I was able to get it resubmitted on the same day. So hopefully that is all set. In my report, I listed some things that have been going on with career in college, and very grateful to Jeff and Gretchen tomorrow. They've lined up for alumni to come in and meet with our juniors and seniors and to really present to our students what it's like that year after high school, the ups and the downs, the things that surprised them, the things that they would do differently. So we'll meet in the ITV room, and it'll be like a panel for them to present and the kids to ask questions to. And we did it last year also, and went over very well with the students. And then Friday, our grand finale before Christmas break is Student Council, and the Studs Group is sponsoring bingo 7th hour, so we'll do that with 6th through 12th graders in the Commons area. And we've done that for the past couple years, and it's a fun way to get together with everybody on the high school end and just enjoy some time together before we leave for break. Do you have any questions for me?
I do. On the synergy being sent out by email, do you have some mechanism, do you make sure they get it? If they don't get back to you, or do you follow?
No,
up?
but we don't do that when we mail them either. I mean,
No,
we
I was
don't,
just
yeah,
curious.
no, exactly. But basing that on, Lynn, like when I send my monthly letter, or sometimes I'll send emails just to certain grades and parents, I've been very pleased this year
Okay.
with the response I get back.
I was just going back to the communication things about how many ways you need to communicate,
Yes.
and
Yep,
it's like, well, I didn't get that.
yeah, yes, I hear you.
How do you arrive at the alumni that show up? Do you ask them, or they volunteer, or?
They've been asked, so, part of it is knowing who's home already, and quite frankly, I think who people have bumped into, and then trying to get a variety. So we have kids who are going to a trade school, kids that went to the workforce, students that are going to a four-year college. So we want a variety of kids on the panel giving feedback to our students. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Sheena in business office.
Okay, I do not have a finance report. I didn't have one today. The last week we've been working really hard just to get audit completed. we were able to submit our final UFARS data on Wednesday. I actually made 2 submissions last week. After going through it, it was very disappointing. I'll be honest. And I've actually spent the day just digging in, trying to find different discrepancies. And looking back, they even stem from fiscal year 22. So looking over a few things, sorry, I'm just gonna go through, so overall, the revenues were very close. I was off by about $90,000, but we under budget enrollment, which is a good practice, but then we also had to pay close to $500,000 back to the state, which was that overpayment. So our revenues actually came out very close and good. It came down to our expenditures, which overall our salaries and wages were close to $400,000 under budget, and supplies and materials, sorry, well, under budget expenditures.
It's just the.
Under what we
Sorry.
budgeted. correct.
Under budget
I understand,
expenditures.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, okay.
Supplies and materials were $219,000 under budget. So I was digging in, trying to find different discrepancies, and some of them I can't really explain. We don't understand how the expenditures for salaries can be that far off, but I'm just going to go down my list on things that I've found. Data processing that we pay Region 1, the expenditures increased by $21,000. Not sure why our bill was $20,000 more than the prior year, but it's something we should probably look into. Transportation, fuel was up $40,000 for 2023 from 2022. Supplies were up $40,000 for transportation. So overall in transportation, expenditures were up $80,000, which was not planned for. For custodial, our consulting fees were up $20,000 from the prior year. Most of that was due to snow removal, and we had a lot of snow last year. So we, that's one big amount we can actually come up with an idea why. Communication services under custodial was $17,000 over budget, but it was also $16,000 higher than the prior year. Custodian salaries, $55,000 over budget, $65,000 higher than 2022. So even increasing the budget by 2%, but it was still a lot higher than the prior year. I can't explain it. It was hard because me coming in, I tried to create the budget right when I started, so Jeff can't really explain that either. Not really sure. Our bond interest in Fund 7 is up $290,791. That was a huge discrepancy even from the last couple years. It's been very consistent. I'm not sure if it's just a difference with the auditors coding things, because I have found differences from Eide Bailey. But I did email our auditor because that's a huge difference in bond interest from last year to this year. So I don't know if it's a difference between Fund 1 to Fund 7, but right now it's recorded in Fund 7. So I emailed her to see if she has an answer for that. District office supplies, we did find they were $12,000 over budget, but I just found that we're coding all office supplies to district office instead of splitting it between the high school and elementary and district office, which is actually just fine. We'll probably just close out the UFARs for high school. Sometimes combining those codes can simplify things for budgeting. and sometimes separating them can help too. So we'll take a look at that. Our copiers is something we definitely need to look at in the future. We budget $36,819 for our copiers, which is what was budgeted the prior year. They actually cost $57,046 this past year, $20,000 more than the prior year. So, overall, across the whole school, we saw an increase of $70,000 just in general supplies. And I did find consulting fees. Oh, also consulting fees across the entire school, expenses were up $100,000 from last year. So there's just a lot of discrepancies from the budget. I take it to heart. I feel I could have did a better job budgeting, but there are huge discrepancies that I can't even explain from the prior year, just with things going up. So moving into this year, we'll have to just take a really good look and go over our budget and see if there's anything we need to tweak or if there's anything we can eliminate, finishing out the rest of the school year. As far as salaries go, we'll adjust the budget to what we need to, but those aren't things that we can just change either. So the final use as far as what was submitted to the state, they're still finishing, just going through payroll. They did start auditing payroll, but they didn't finish, so I'm still working with the auditors on that. They're just asking for different reports, just checking on hire dates, confirming birth dates, TRA, PERA, making sure our contributions match payroll, just all those things they should look at, making sure we still coded grant dollars correctly. Nancy said like they weren't able to provide the final audit report today. They should be able to in January. So it just keeps getting pushed back, and I apologize for that. So as of now, and I'm noticing a discrepancy even in my frontline reports, but we had a deficit for 2022, which was $702,819. My frontline is showing a deficit in 2023 of $868,269, but it's actually closer to 1.1 million. So my frontline is not correct there, but there are some things that we still need the auditors to look at with our bond interest. And Jeff did also send an email to Ellers to check on that. So I was working all of this, and I have not finished my bank rec for October. Everything is entered. I just have to close out the month. But there are discrepancies in this report the more I look at it. So if you look at my first expenditure section for object series and program series, they both have the same difference of $406,000. So something's definitely off there. And then the projected end of the year balances are not calculating either. So then I went and I ran another report for budget summary, actually just prior to the meeting, and I'm erroring out and it's not pulling my data. So I did email Frontline because it's not pulling in right. So I'll have them look at that. And then Lynn caught even my, if you look at our community education expenditures, haven't rolled in at all for the year. So so I did contact them. I'm going to have them take a look at that. But but we'll work on our revising our budget for this year. Usually it's provided in February, I believe, but if we need to move it up to next month, we certainly can. Also, the STAR reporting, the STAR staff report was completed just last month. That's when all licensed staff and all non-certified staff were reported to the state. The building square footage report was also completed last week. And now we're coming on year end, so we'll be doing 1099s and W-2s and all that fun stuff, so. Any questions? Thoughts?
The bond interest doesn't make sense.
It does not make sense, no.
I mean, it's a large number that just doesn't make sense. Which brings us to the specifics of, you talk about looking at the budget again, but I don't see, I don't have a grasp of what we are going to spend next year. So I don't even know why we should be talking budget at this point. I mean, the numbers are just really difficult to get a hold of. You know, there's just so many question marks. When you look at $290,000 in bond interest, which should be just a black and white number, you know, it shouldn't have any real nuance to it. And I find that really frustrating. You know, I mean, it should be a simple, this is not right, you know, or this is right. And so I'm frustrated with that. And then the things, little things, but like the Region 1, for instance, I mean, that's somewhat of a boilerplate type of a stamping every year. We go through, we've been doing Region 1 for how many years, right? And you'd think that they would alert you with a little more than fine print, that they were upping by $20,000, you know, especially when there's a budgeting going on there.
Yeah, Jeff just caught that prior to the board meeting, so we'll have Jill pull invoices and we'll go through and we'll certainly call them.
And I understand the coding gets, you know, so it's hard to point at a specific area, but I look at, for instance, and I'm asking Seth on that, the custodial consulting, I assume, has something to do with like WIDSEF. Would that be where that would come from, that extra 20 grand? Because that's about what that cost us, wasn't it? You know, so.
That wasn't paid until this year, was it?
WIDSEF is
This fiscal year.
2024.
That's
This is-
2024.
So this is,
All right.
this is last year.
Right.
But we didn't use anything like that last year.
And two, for me, where I would budget something versus where it's actually getting paid out of,
Right.
sometimes there's a discrepancy. And two, when I started, we were financially behind many months where, I mean, I jumped in and I had to close out at least 4 months that hadn't been of finance, like month end hadn't been done for many months. And so it's just even the credit card receipts not bidding. Yeah, so there was a lot of expenditures actually not posted into finance. So it's, when you look at that, it's really hard to budget.
And we had outstanding debt with the insurance
We did.
liability that, about $96,000 that should have been.
Oh,
taken care of.
yes, no, good point. So I did mention this several months ago that we found, you know, health insurance, reconciliation was not being done. Meaning taking a bill and just comparing it with payroll to see, okay, is this person still working here? Each month, like we balance with what we're paying with health insurance versus what's actually going through payroll. And we found many employees were still on insurance. And so we wrote off, it was just over $96,000 worth of debt
Yeah.
for health insurance. This audit, so.
That would be the question for somebody like me who doesn't understand the nuts and bolts of it. How do you rein that in? I look at custodial salaries at 65,000 more. That's a huge number. I mean, I could look in the thing and find percentages on it, but it just strikes me as, you know, that's got to be 50% anyway on the
And I will own
budgeted.
some of the expenditures for salaries were my fault coming in, but then a lot of them I can't explain, where I just rolled over what was there, exactly what the prior year expense was, and it's still way more than that. Not even 2%, it's,
Yeah, and added the, whatever was
The increase.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, as a board member, for instance, I look back and I'm looking through, I got September comparison from 2022 and 2023, just to see, you know, where we're going with this. And should I be looking, you know, at specific, and I pointed them out to Lynn, and I think that this is exactly what you're addressing, you know, where you have other financing uses, and it's up 203%. And it's something I never would have looked at unless we're having this conversation. So I'm not looking to put blame, I mean, as a board member, I should be able to look down that and go, well, 203%, increase. That's ridiculous over, year prior. And this starts to make sense when you break it down, but I'm really frustrated with my inability, but I think in general, our inability to be able to point at specific numbers and say, we haven't run this business that differently than we did 24 months ago, and yet we're finding ourselves in a real financially poor position right now. We've done our due diligence, we've reduced staff, gone through the pain of taking jobs away from people. We're gonna go through that again. And still to have this thing start to burgeon out of control, it's frustrating.
Yeah, so we're definitely deficit spending, and we'll revise the budget, but we just need to reduce our expenditures overall.
Yeah, but
We
I
have
mean,
no
we need to
control
do
over
it.
our revenues at this point, but
We need to do it now.
yes.
I mean, 12 months down the road, we're gonna be having a bad conversation if we don't really
put
rein
a
this in.
freeze on any unnecessary spending for this year. We're gonna still pay coaches, and we're gonna pay people and order what we have to order to keep the facility running. But anything that we can push down to next year or the year after, that's what we're gonna be doing here for the immediate future until we know exactly what we have and what we're working with. My frustration is with the front line. I'll be very blunt with that. When we used that projection model last year, and that's how we based, this is what we need to cut. We knew we were gonna deficit spend a little bit this year. And then there's some other things that creeped up that Sheena alluded to earlier in this year. We discovered the almost $500,000 goof up with the county check and how that was accounted for incorrectly. That kind of made us feel we had more sitting here than what we had. So I was anticipating a $600,000-$700,000 deficit.
Yes.
And that made me uncomfortable, but when it's another 400,000, that's what I'm struggling with. So we're gonna have to just dig into it and find out. Some of it I think we're gonna find is that insurance debt, that kind of thing, that's almost 100,000. Our fuel and transportation costs, and just those things with the high inflation and stuff. I think digging into that and knowing this chunk of money is just based on $5 plus diesel fuel and grocery expenses. And then we need to figure out where there is some of those disconnects that we don't have an answer. And the salaries are something that
They've been off for a couple of years.
yeah. So we need to figure out where that actually is and get that budgeted better.
Right, because
We'll
in
be
the
looking
same,
at
in the
reductions
same
next year.
sentence, we're talking about going to the public and saying, yeah, we need a referendum, we want to get we need some money. We do, there's no question. The building needs it. We need to clean up the little stuff, because I think that we were all okay with deficit spending when it was, this is what's gonna be spent anyway. I mean, we're fixing a pool, we're fixing a chiller, we're putting large amounts of money and knowing that we're paring that down and getting a little close. And that's where we were going with the referendum is, hey, we're spending money on an aging building, and an aging business. We need to, up the ante a little bit here. So I on the other question marks is what I really, for instance, on a bond interest, it just seems like there should be a logical offering of why that is a $290,000 number, I mean, so that money's gotta be somewhere.
Well, and two, just looking through Fund 1, it's just how the auditors do things a little bit different. So even our permanent transfers, they had me set up new codes, and they would move our expenditures, even though Bailey had it under a different code the prior 3 years. So I hope she has a good explanation for it, but. Or it'd be great if it was an error.
I mean, that's,
I mean-
there's hope out there. I mean, I don't understand that at all. It's like they took all our bond payments from the next 4 years and made us pay them off right. I mean, what'd you say we were paying, $90,000 a year in a bond?
No, 145, and it went up to the 290.
It was like 135 and it went up to 297.
So it's like doubled, over doubled.
Over double.
And the,
Went up 247,000.
and as our bond balance goes down, that should decrease, not increase. It's almost like either something wasn't recorded properly in prior years,
There's
or,
that possibility.
or something's wrong this year.
So they did
I
have
think-
me create a journal entry, and the code, what they had wrote was that a prepaid expense in the balance account. So I'm wondering if they took something from this next year and pushed back if they're setting it up as a prepaid prepaid interest payment
And that,
is just my,
so
My
then your
assumption.
interest for 2024 would be zero then.
but I don't know really
Does it
why,
seem
because
wrong?
the expenditure is coded in 2024.
Yeah.
So,
Seems weird.
yeah, I don't want to make an assumption on it. I just know it's
No.
definitely not right. So.
Yeah, something's wrong.
They have been working very hard on it and communicating. It's just been Nancy and I emailing back and forth at midnight, working together. So,
Well, I appreciate the 12 very obvious, things that you listed, because that was, I think, my initial question. When you get that nebulous kind of other financing uses and then see the number that's attached to it in the column. Nice to see, now it makes it easier to hopefully address that and say, okay, we got to stop this here.
yeah. So if you need anything else, just let me know. It's been a crazy last couple weeks, but whatever we need to do to get it straightened out. And I really do apologize for some of the discrepancies in the expenditures, but a lot of them, I mean, we're not even close to the prior year, so just way over. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what now? Like, and maybe as a board member, what's our role? What do we need to do? How do we fix this? Are we kind of waiting for the
We need to wait for the auditors in
Okay.
January to give their report. We have an assurance that they'll meet the December 31st deadline for MDE, getting that.
Well, they said that, but they also said they would meet the November 30th
Yeah.
deadline.
So hopefully they can get that submitted on time.
Yeah.
Otherwise we'll have to.
And just so you know, I'm not venting on anybody specific in the room. I did drag out the last year's audit, and I looked desperately for red flags in that. And there was not an indication that you're going down this wayward path, so I wonder about the audit. We talk about, the auditors missed this, they missed that, or whatever. So I'm not totally dependent on the auditors either at this point. Usually that used to be sort of where the brick wall
Right.
was. Okay, well, that's the auditor, but it just seems like we're still not getting 100% on the auditors either. I know you've had difficulty with the current situation.
Well, and they did have a lot of questions about, okay, there's some money sitting here, and they just kind of rolled it over. So the new auditors, not knowing exactly what the auditors from the prior year did. So this is my first time switching to a new auditor, and they had a lot of questions, not knowing what happened the prior year and how things were recorded.
They have not been very helpful.
What's that?
They have not been very helpful.
Helpful, I agree.
No, they would not send our final work papers to the new auditor.
Really? I mean, it's not like they're hiding something?
We paid for them. So,
That doesn't seem to make a difference with any of these auditors. Yeah, we'll get that in January, even though the board will have to approve the audit on the 31st of December before we've even seen the audit.
right.
I mean, technically, isn't that how that works? We're going to the state with an audit that we haven't seen, that we're approving. Frustrating.
So,
Well, even if you didn't approve the audit by December 31st, the auditors would still have to submit the report to the MDE.
Right.
You know, so it's,
They're following the legality.
they have to present the audit.
well, and we won't approve it until January, so
Yeah.
it's submitted on.
Oh, I see, so they submitted
Yeah.
that.
They will submit it unapproved.
Okay.
So as board members, just put our feet to the fire, and each month we'll come back and try to, what we can explain, we'll explain, and we'll work with SMS and get the projection model back. Or either we're gonna have to be able to trust it, or we're gonna have to do something, use a different tool. Because we need to start making decisions for next year. So we need to have something that we're comfortable with and know that it's in the ballpark as far as where we are financially, and so.
Thank you. Thanks, Sheena. Anything else on that? Any other staff reports? I think that was the end of the list, but I don't know if there's anything.
Well, I made it short intentionally, so.
Yep, okay. Guess we can move on. Close the working session and move on to the regular board meeting. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Lyon.
Second by Rovita. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Any board presenters, if we even have any? Written communications, we just have listed ballots for the Region 1 Joint Powers Board election. Is there anything we need to act on?
I think I had one person that sent me a ballot, so I can forward that on, so.
Okay. And no old business listed. Next up, we have new business. Looking for a motion to approve the October 3rd, 2023 special board meeting minutes and then November 27th, 2023 board meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Second by Lyon.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve the invoices, financial statements, bank reconciliation, wire transfers, and purchase card statements.
I'll make the motion.
Second by Lyon.
Rovita and Lyon, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve personnel resignations, retirements, and appointments. We have a resignation of Carol Busco, assistant cook, appointments of Emily Tangy, pool attendant, Diane Carlos, intervention Read 180, systems 44 teacher, Nicole Fiala, school readiness VPK teacher, and Brett Nylander, varsity hockey coach.
I'll motion.
Second by Lyon.
Rovita and Lyon, any discussion?
How long was Carol Bushko here?
A little over a year, 2 years.
Okay. And so we're back out to advertising again?
I will double check, I don't think we are advertising right now.
Okay, they're just making do with our,
I think so. I will double check.
Any other discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Looking for an approval of the contract agreement with professional services agreement with Northland Counseling Center.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, Alice and Robita, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we're looking to set the organizational meeting date and time. We have Monday, January 8th at 8 a.m.
I'll make that motion.
Second by Lyon.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve resolution 2023/2024-17, accepting a donation of $70 from Barbara, how do you pronounce that last name? Bukowick, as a memorial donation to the Lake of the Woods School.
I would make that motion.
I'll second.
Lyon and Ellis, any
Do you have her as a
discussion?
teacher?
Thank you for the donation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
What did she teach?
I think math, but I'm not sure.
Goes back a long time.
Yeah. You didn't have her, did you, Jill? I think it was way before that.
I don't
Her husband
recognize
was the
it.
principal.
Really?
Could have been in the old school.
Okay.
I can find out.
No, just curious. I can ask the Ballards because I'll stumble into them and they're up next on the agenda.
Right.
So they must have had a
Exactly.
relationship.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, looking for a motion to approve resolution 2023/2024-18, accepting a donation of $30 from Steve and Joanne Ballard as a memorial for Barbara Bukowick to the Lake of the Woods School.
Motion by Lyon.
Second by Robita.
All in favor, or any discussion?
C, discussion on F.
Okay, thank you for the donation again for that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we're looking for a motion to adopt resolution 2023/2024-19 to establish combined polling places for 2024.
I'll make
Motion.
the motion.
Second by Lyon.
Okay, Robita and Lyon. Any discussion?
No, I think, didn't you say that was a roll call?
vote,
Okay.
yeah.
Why would that be a roll call?
I think the roll call is J.
It's just for the levy.
It's for the levy, I believe.
Oh, it's not for the combined polling place? I thought I read somewhere.
I think I did. No, I think it's in the resolution.
Yeah, and I say when in
Okay.
doubt, do a roll call anyway.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
You can do it for
Yeah,
both.
I'm pretty sure it's in the board packet.
Okay.
Remember that for some
All
reason.
right.
I was just curious why they would have a roll call vote for that, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's stated in the actual resolution.
All right. Robita,
Yay.
Lyon,
Aye.
Alice, aye, and Trask, aye. Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve resolution 2023/2024-20, accepting a donation of $50 from Tom and Joy Bukowick as a memorial donation for Barbara Bukowick to the Lake of the Woods School.
I'll make that motion.
Second by Lyon.
Alice and Lyon, any discussion? Again, thank you for the donation. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, sorry. Aye.
Oh,
No, I'm
sorry.
in favor. I didn't say it. No.
I just ran right over you anyways, so. Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve resolution 2023/2024-21 to set the property tax levy at $2,050,832.79 versus, or for 2023 payable 2024. Motion?
Motion by Lyon.
Second by Robita.
And this one did not need a roll call, is that correct?
I think it does.
No, it does.
I would think so.
I think it
It
does.
would be on the list.
I was looking.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Okay, any discussion other than the roll call?
Roll call on this one. I might have mixed them up.
Okay, we'll do a roll call, just for fun.
Yep.
Robita? Aye. Lyon?
Aye.
Ellis?
Aye.
Trask? Aye. Motion passes. And we covered all our bases there. Okay. Next, we're looking for a motion to approve the contract with Dakota Fire Protection for the 2024 sprinkler inspection.
Lyon would make the motion.
I'll second.
Lyon and Ellis, any discussion?
Any idea how much it went up? I mean, it's $1,400 for the annual fee. And $125 per backflow test, but you don't know what it was last year.
We don't do the backflow test.
Okay.
Only for that.
Where are you looking, Jennifer?
I'm looking at my phone, which I wish I had my computers. So it would have been last December.
You have board minutes from a year ago on your phone?
I have Drive.
Oh, there you go, sorry.
December or January, because it's not due till the 31st of January.
I don't see it as December.
Possible we did it in January even.
She had a great interest in math, science, engineering.
But she had an English degree. She was teaching English too. Did a little of everything.
My memory's not so good.
I have 2020 here, and that was 1,200.
All right, well, I mean, we're talking 200, I'm just, the Region 1 number from our last discussion with Sheena's got me trying not to be as complacent.
200 over 3 years.
Right, pretty.
Okay.
So in the future, when we do this, we'll, renew contracts, we'll write up so that we say, this is what it was last year.
Yep,
Yeah,
and whether or not
that's a good
it
idea.
falls
We
within
used to
the
do that,
budget
so we'll
even
start- Yeah,
would be helpful.
so we'll add that,
I think that's a good idea. Good practice. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Any other business tonight? No. We'll adjourn the meeting at 7:38.